friends, let's talk about the best way to reverse fatty liver because it matters more than most people realize. So in this video, we're not only going to learn what the real irritants are so that you can remove them from your food, but you'll also learn about foods that actively reduce liver fat, restore insulin sensitivity, lower blood sugars, and support sustainable weight loss. And you'll be surprised that fat in the liver can accumulate even when a person doesn't eat. However, fatty liver is tightly linked to overeating certain carbohydrates, which can lead to insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, and obesity. But here's the part that often gets missed. Not everyone with fatty liver is overweight, and carbohydrates are not the only problem when it comes to excessive fat in the liver. And that's because this condition isn't about calories alone. It's about how the liver is being stressed, signaled, and overwhelmed. Fat accumulating in the liver, it actually irritates liver cells and over time can lead to permanent scarring and hardening. While this may all sound pretty complex, what we need to take in terms of action really isn't. There are all natural accessible foods that can reverse fatty liver, and the best way to reverse it, improve blood sugar control and help you lose weight and keep it off, but only if the major irritants are significantly reduced. Now, the most important takeaway from this video is simple and it's empowering. Fatty liver is reversible if you do the work, is to remove the irritants. And this is where there's so much confusion. If you search online, you'll find people saying bread is toxic, wheat is poisonous, and everyone should go gluten-free. But what if it's not whole wheat itself that's irritating your liver? What if the real problem is how the food industry has stripped, altered, oxidized, and chemically engineered wheat and then rebuilt it with additives designed for shelf life and profit, not human biology? What if it's the other stuff that you're actually eating with the wheat that is a driver of fatty liver? You're going to be surprised by which everyday foods quietly make fatty liver worse, even when they're marketed as normal or healthy. And if you watch this video all the way through, you'll uncover the truths most people never hear. And more importantly, you'll learn how to protect your liver, reset your metabolism, and put fatty liver into reverse. To fully understand how to reverse fatty liver, you need to understand that there are two kinds of drivers for fatty liver. The first one is caused by alcohol, and the second one is caused by processed foods. Now let's address these in order. So for decades, when physicians saw fat accumulating in the liver, it was a no-brainer. It was automatically blamed on alcohol. And alcoholic fatty liver was essentially the only form of fatty liver that clinicians saw. And it wasn't until relatively recently, literally after I became a physician, that medicine fully acknowledged that there was a different kind of fatty liver, that people can develop fat in the liver even if they never touch alcohol. And this realization fundamentally changed how physicians understand liver disease because it revealed that metabolism, insulin resistant, diet, and our modern lifestyle factors can damage your liver just as profoundly as alcohol ever did. And in fact, I vividly remember a lady who received a liver transplant. And this was when I was a fellow. She was diagnosed with idiopathic fatty liver. Nobody could tell why she had fatty liver, but now we know it wasn't idiopathic, it was her food. So let's focus now on the second cause of fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver, because obviously fat in the liver won't go away if you don't quit whatever is irritating it. And then if it's alcohol, then if you remove the alcohol, then the fat will reverse. And by the way, no amount of alcohol is safe for your liver, even that glass of wine. So when it comes to food, there's actually a lot of ingredients that can contribute to fatty liver, even if it's not a carbohydrate. So let's start with chemical additives that give your foods flavor, color, and texture. There's literally over 10,000 FDA-approved food additives that are chemicals added to your food and sold to you. And at the center of the problem is a chemical called fructose. It's a sugar. And of course, there's lots of different kinds of sugar. And the human body, though, we only need glucose for energy. Starches are broken down into usable glucose for our metabolism. And unlike glucose, which is used by just about every single cell in the body, fructose, that's metabolized almost entirely by the liver. Now, when fructose enters the liver, it bypasses many of the normal metabolic checkpoints that help regulate energy use. So instead, fructose is rapidly converted into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. And this fat gets trapped in liver cells. it's not even really a calorie issue. And this is because fructose forces the liver into fat production mode even when energy stores are already full. And over time, this leads to fat droplets, inflammation, insulin resistance, and eventually fibrosis. And this is why sugary beverages like soda, sports drinks, sweetened yogurt, sauces, and even healthy snacks sweetened with concentrated fruit juice, they are so strongly associated with fatty liver, even in people who are not overweight. So stop eating processed healthy snacks because I can guarantee you that they are not healthy when they're being processed. Turn it around, and if it's concentrated syrups of any sort or concentrated juice of any sort, it doesn't matter if it's from beets, you know you're getting chemicalized fructose. And that's a problem. We still gravitate towards that sweet taste. And initially, people gravitated towards soda, literally sugar water. And it was originally made out of sugar, but then came high fructose corn syrup, which began to rise in the late 1960s. But it didn't truly become widespread until the mid to late 1970s. And then it dominated our supermarket shelves in 1980s. And guess who developed it? The Japanese in 1967. They discovered an enzyme that can convert glucose to fructose. So literally they take the corn glucose and they cheaply and efficiently make it into fructose because it's sweeter. You can use less of it. And at first it was just a niche industrial ingredient. And then the US caught on. And just in the 1970s, because of economics, sugar was heavily taxed. Therefore, it was difficult and more expensive to import sugar cane. And corn became subsidized by the US government. So high fructose corn syrup was easy to make and cheaper for people. And eventually, high fructose corn syrup dominated cane sugar. And by the early 1980s, all the major food beverage companies, they pretty much switched to the cheaper version. And in 1984, like the main soda brands, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they replaced cane sugar with high fructose corn syrup. And from that point on, you have sodas, you have fruit drinks, you have sauces, breads, yogurts, cereals. Pretty much all processed foods would rather cheaply use high fructose corn syrup than real sugar. And the rapid rise of high fructose corn syrup, it mirrors a sharp increase in obesity, insulin resistance, and fatty liver. It all begins in the 1980s and it accelerates in the 1990s. So while humans have always consumed small amounts of fructose in whole fruit, or in occasional finding a beehive and eating honey, this regular, repeated consumption of high-dose liquid fructose intake is really a modern experiment. And high fructose corn syrup, I think, has proven that it's not safe. In general, Americans eat over 100 pounds of pure sugar every year. You are what you eat, folks. And if you're looking for a sugar replacement like agave for table sugar or maple syrup, molasses, coconut sugar, inverted sugar, and if you think they're fructose-free, think again. They all have fructose. And you'll say stuck in your addiction. And fructose, remember, no matter what form you get it in, unless it's trapped in a fiber matrix and diluted in water like a fruit, it will cause fatty liver. And fruit is very different because it's in that fiber matrix, that packaging you have to chew and digest through. And the little amount of fructose is really being taken care of by your gut microbiome. But when you concentrate fruit and you take the juice out, then that's not the same because there's no fiber matrix. It's already been broken. It's actually been thrown away. So don't think that a product is just good for you because it came from a natural source. Literally, it has to be all natural. There's nothing natural about concentrating any kind of sugar. And even if it's not 100% fructose, it can still damage your metabolism. Now, if you dissect table sugar, that's half glucose and half fructose. That means for every spoonful, you directly give your liver a toxin, fructose. And then your glucose also spikes your insulin. And the glucose component is telling the body to store the energy, while the fructose component simultaneously drives fat into the liver. So this is a metabolic trap. High insulin blocks fat burning. High fructose increases fat production. And this locks more and more fat in your cells. So this combination rewires liver metabolism, and it makes it harder to get rid of your fat. It makes it easier to accumulate it. So fatty liver in this context is not really a matter of willpower. It is a predictable outcome with chronic biochemical pressure.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
And even if you don't eat any sugar or drink any alcohol, believe it or not, you can still get fatty liver, which is caused by a disorder of fat handling inside the liver. And multiple pathways can drive that process. So one of the most common is insulin resistance. Now, even without sugar, chronically high insulin, often driven by refined starches like white bread, pasta, and rice products. And in America, the majority of processed foods, I think over 70%, they're made from one grain. So we're talking about from pizzas to hamburger buns to pastries to crackers and noodles. And it's no wonder why everybody is advocating for gluten-free. But it's not the gluten that's causing the fatty liver. It's actually the concentrated carbohydrate, the starch in the wheat. We've ground it up into a fine powder, and then we glue it back together to pretend that it's food. That's not food, folks. Can you grind up an apple, put it back on a tree? Will it look like an apple? No. So really a good analogy would be like a keyboard and keys. You can't type on a computer without keys being on a keyboard. But if I took the keys off the keyboard and just gave you a bunch of keys, even if I gave you all the keys on a keyboard and didn't give you the keyboard, could you type? No, you would just have the keys. You would have an incomplete keyboard. So when we remove different components from a plant, that was meant to be eaten whole, by the way. You are no longer having a whole food, and that affects your metabolism differently. Wheat is not the same as white flour. It's missing the germ and the bran, the parts of the actual wheat grain that protects you from fatty liver. But when these components are in the flour, it doesn't make the flour taste so good. It's denser, it's not as fluffy. And if you're comparing it to white bread, you know white bread is fluffy and light in texture. That's artificial, folks. Jesus nor the people of Pompeii ate that kind of food. That's a modern invention, and that's why America is getting sicker. And white flour couldn't have happened without the Industrial Revolution, in which industrial roll mill was introduced in 1870s to America. That made flour softer, have a longer shelf life, easier to transport, and more consistent when you baked it. So by the early 20th century, it became the default flour used in breads, pastries, and packaged goods. However, within decades, doctors began noticing widespread deficiencies, even thiamine deficiency, vitamin B1. That leads to conditions like beriberi and Wernicke's encephalopathy. Then you have niacin deficiencies that led to pellagra. And by the 1940s, the problem was so severe that the US government mandated enriching synthetic B vitamins and iron back to white flour. Importantly, enrichment replaced only a fraction of what was removed, and it did not restore fiber, vitamin E, magnesium, zinc, or hundreds of other phytochemicals that we have yet to discover. So by enriching a fake food, we have now built a second wave of medical problems associated with highly refined starch. And that's fatty liver disease, diabetes, obesity, and insulin resistance. And instead of reading history and learning these lessons, we still want to manipulate nature, our bodies. And nothing good ever happens when we're trying to manipulate nature. And now we're giving people medicines to just get them to stop eating. It's amazing that we just don't stop manipulating not only our food, but our biochemistry. And the food industry doesn't just stop at making the flour. It makes the flour taste good. It adds more junk. Have you ever tasted flour in water? It doesn't taste good. Nobody's gonna eat that stuff. The only way you're gonna get people to eat it is if you add fat, flavor, and hence the creation of crackers, pastries, donuts, and desserts. And can you guess what else these items have in common besides starch that is contributing to your fatty liver? I said it, fat. Excessive fat. We're not just overeating starch, folks. We're overeating starch with fat, which is another major driver of excessive dietary fat. When you eat that fat, especially saturated fat, it gets delivered to your liver. And when large amounts of fat circulate in the bloodstream, the liver literally acts as a traffic controller. If fat arrives faster than it can be processed and exported, it accumulates. And this is why fatty liver has been documented in people on a very low carbohydrate or ketogenic diet who consume large amounts of saturated fat, but very little or no sugar. The liver doesn't care whether that fat came from a conversion, came from sugar, or from the bloodstream. It only sees the overload. And saturated fat is hidden not just in flour like croissants and donuts, but you're also very likely to be eating it in spreads, margarines, butters, salami, pepperoni, or hams. Yes, your sandwich meat is probably a problem. Now, I know you're probably wondering what you can eat because I just listed a bunch of stuff that shouldn't be eaten together if you want to cure your fatty liver. And I know it could be overwhelming to learn anything new in the beginning. But unfortunately, convenient foods, they're convenient for a reason, right? They sell for reasons because they taste taste good. They have fat in it. But the good news is it's not hard to get started to reverse your fatty liver. And so number one, look for super convenient low-fat foods that take very little prep and that's fresh. And that would be fresh fruit. Now, even though fruit has sugar, there is so little sugar in fresh fruit. The majority of it is water weight. And then you have the fiber. People with liver disease do better when they eat more fruit. People with diabetes do better when they eat more fruit. This is not fruit cups, folks. This is fresh fruit. And the more fruit you eat, the more weight you can lose. And frankly, if all you did was eat fruit, you would lose your fatty liver, you would lose weight and reverse type 2 diabetes, but you wouldn't be so healthy because the nutrients in fruit are very limited. They are not complete. And we need to have complete nutrition. So the second super convenient food to eat is more vegetables, and all different kinds of vegetables that are low in calories and high in micronutrients, especially phytonutrients that make vegetables colorful. That red, orange, yellow color, that's made by plant phytochemicals called beta-carotene. And guess what this nutrient has been shown to help do? Burn fat. So if you want to lose your fat, eat more foods with beta-carotene, especially look for any fruits and vegetables that are colorful and it will have more beta-carotene. Now, I gravitate towards super orange color things like a carrot or squash, as opposed to eating white color foods like a white strawberry or white roots. Because those color mean they have beta-carotene and other phytonutrients. That's just kind of my thing. And another thing with vegetables that it's really difficult to eat, there's a high barrier of cooking. And frankly, if you don't cook a lot and you want to eat your vegetables, if it's edible raw, blend it and drink it. In general, vegetables are low in calorie, high in fiber, high in micronutrients. It's absolutely worth investing your time to learn the system. Fiber is really the key focus. Focus on foods with fiber, which is very different from taking a fiber supplement. Well, it's hard to overeat a fiber supplement because it tastes so bad, but it still takes precious real estate that can make you full. And as it is, America is already struggling with eating enough phytonutrient-dense food. We need to get our buckets filled properly. Otherwise, it can be quite detrimental for us in the long run. And this is true whether or not we're taking medications to squash our appetite like GLP-1 agonists. And agonists, especially if you haven't changed the quality of your food or added supplements, when you eat whole food with fiber, the majority are packed with essential micronutrients and phytonutrients that aren't listed on the RDA as essential, even though I bet lots of them are. We're a nation of overfed and undernourished. Essentially, we're malnourished. And this is especially true for people who aren't eating, whether it's by choice, induced, or forced to starve. Malnutrition and rapid weight loss can also cause fatty liver disease. And this seems counterintuitive, but when protein, choline, methionine, or key micronutrients are deficient in the liver, then it cannot package fat into VLDL particles for export. And this was clearly seen in starvation studies and is still seen after bariatric surgery, eating disorders, or prolonged fasting without adequate nutrition supervision. In addition, frequent eating, stress, hormones, poor sleep, and inactivity can all push far into the liver and prevent it from burning its own fat stores. Now, if you want to learn how to easily incorporate some movements that can help you burn fat, watch the next video.